What's up, everybody? Welcome to the 84 show. I am Arty 84, your host of this action-packed podcast extravaganza, if you will. Thank you guys for joining me. As always, if you like what we're doing here, please subscribe. Hit the little subscribe button if you're watching on YouTube or on Podbean if you listen to the audio version or in the Apple iTunes, where anywhere your i iPads, anywhere your podcasts are found. Now, I do like to claim myself as the original founder of the podcast since I had been putting my shows online after they've been recorded since 2005. Now, this podcast I didn't even exist at this point in 2005. So I like to think of myself a little bit of a pioneer, if you will, but there's no way to prove it. I guess you can go on there. I guess it's no different than just uploading your show and everything like that. But you can go on to anywhere you get your audio version of podcast, and you can go all the way back down to 2005, and you could find me. You could find the original episodes of the old show, the Arty 84 show, sitting there just waiting there for you to listen to, for your listening pleasure, and all that good stuff. So, thank you for joining me. The second episode here, we're going to be talking today about college. Ooh, college. This is going to be a touchy subject to some people because some people are going to be like against this, my hot take on this, and some are going to be for my hot take on this. And I'm going to give you examples of one way or another, and we're going to go from there. And I want you guys to comment below and give me some feedback. Let me know what you guys think, if it's worth it or not. Because over the past, I don't know, 30 years or so, let's see. So I started formal school, kindergarten, in the fall of 1989, and that's 35 years ago, give or take, right? 35 years ago. Is that how long it is? 35, 36 years ago? Long time ago. 36 years ago sounds about right. And when I was there, obviously when you're a kindergarten, no one really talks about college. Now, I come from a family who my mother and father both graduated with associate's degrees um, in 2-year colleges for different majors. My father's major, he ended up using. My mother's major, she did not use. Okay. Um, and back then, when they went to college in the 70s and early 80s, it was completely different. I mean, it was a lot cheaper. The price of college has astronomically accelerated, and you're not getting any more of an education than you were before. And that's the problem. The product is just the same. Now, it's been updated with technology and stuff, but if some of these majors, the product has not changed. You're still learning the same exact stuff. Anything in the engineering field, yes, you are getting acclimated to computers and other stuff of that nature, but you're still using the fundamentals that have always been there for the most part. And I don't know how that constitutes more money, right? That makes no sense. And that's the biggest red flag right there when you think of college. I went to a college, the same college my father went to. He graduated uh, about 30 years after I did, before I did, I should say. Okay. It's been that long. It was, so been 20. Yeah. It was almost 31 years. Okay. 31 years after I graduated, he graduated, 31 years before me. That's basically what I'm getting to. Back then, for the entire 2 years, or I believe it was a year, let's say it was a year, it was approximately, I believe, $25 to $3,000 a year to attend this school. So I think he said he paid $5,000 altogether for his 2 years of college. So it was probably about 2,500, right? I, 31 years later, was paying about 20 something thousand, about 21, 22,000 a year for the same school. How does that make any sense? Does inflation go up that much over 30 years? Now, we can look at a lot of things of what the price was in the late 70s and compare them to what they were in the early 2000s. And it didn't go up that much. I mean, gas back then was $1. Back then, gas was $2.50, so I think it went up, it doubled a little bit, right? But going from like $2,500 for a year to 20,000 plus a year is astronomical. And not just the college I went to; it's every college. Every college was exactly like that, and the price just kept on going up. When I was in college, the price was going up $5,000 a year. So whereas it started at $20,000, it ended around, let's see, it went 20, 25. It went up about 2,000 a year. So I think I ended at $28,000 for my last year in college. Okay. Now, what I went to college for, unbeknownst to myself and not really knowing the industry very well, I didn't need to go to college. Having an architecture degree is a glorified art degree. It's all it is. Now, my school proclaimed to be one of the better architecture schools, you know, in the nation. Definitely New England. The only competition in New England was us, the neighbors across the street, and a few other schools scattered throughout. Us being the private schools, us and the ones across the street, and the ones being the state school a little out west, right? So we spend all this money and we take these classes. So about 25% of classes, if you don't know when you go to college, are useless classes. They're English classes. And I will go on another episode about when I realized college was a joke my freshman year at the University of Massachusetts, Lowell. And the class I took with a professor I took that pretty much gave me all the red flags I needed to know with the indoctrination of students in college. And this was 2002. This was, 20, almost 25 years ago. This was going on. It's always been going on. There's no coincidence that more liberal minded theories and liberal minded thoughts and ways of people thinking things should be done come out of colleges and not out of the electrical union. There's no coincidence there. All colleges are liberal. They all give liberal thoughts. Kids come in not knowing left or right. And then these teachers, it's been nothing but an indoctrination for the last probably 50 years. Safe to say. And it makes you wonder, is it worth sending your child to college? Especially if it's for a major in which you really don't need a major to go to college for. That you could just work and get there. Right? And I'll give you some examples of college of degrees you probably do need to go to college for, right? A doctor, obviously. A lawyer to some extent because you get to learn the law. An engineer, I guess. But even that, we'll go into that about a little bit of that. Scientist, I guess that falls. It depends. I could fall into more engineering. That could fall into being a doctor. I like to put it right in a big umbrella because you could be a scientist and be a doctor and all that stuff. So anything in that medical type stuff, right? To an extent, I mean, to be a doctor, yes. But to be a nurse, you don't have to. A nurse, all you have to do is take classes sometimes, right? Take classes at community college and be a nurse. Just as good as a nurse as a girl that goes 4 years to a nursing school and a higher university. You guys learn the same exact thing. If you have the ability to learn and take knowledge, then what's the difference between going to take some classes to be a nurse than you go into a 4-year school? It doesn't make you smarter. And that's the number one thing. People think because you go to college, you're smarter. I know a lot of idiots that went to college. In fact, I know more smart people that didn't go to college that did go to college. With common sense, street smarts, and the ability to get through life, have a work ethic, and have families, and be able to run their own businesses. And these are people that didn't go to college. These are just people who just got out of high school, got out of the military, took up a trade, took up a job, worked from the bottom up, and took their job, right? So other than those professions that I kind of splat out there, you really don't need college for anything. You could take, tech classes. For example, you want to be an architect, you want to learn how to draft, right? You could take community college classes at night, learn how to AutoCAD. I taught one of my best friends how to do AutoCAD in 3 weeks. 3 Saturday sessions of 5 hours apiece. He learned AutoCAD. Now, I've been doing AutoCAD since I was in high school. So for me, it was a piece of cake to teach him the fundamentals and the easy stuff to do. I gave him a little book with some shortcuts, how to do some stuff, and that was it. There's no need to go to 4 years of college for that. To be an architect, it's all about all we did in architecture, we didn't learn about joist placements and how many beams and columns you need for over square footage. We did none of the structural engineering stuff that you think architects do. We did zero engineering stuff. We took a brief class my junior year, 1 semester of the inside of a building. We were told, and I tell you, we were told when we did our designs to just forget about all the stuff that needs to run the building. Forget about the mechanical stuff. Forget about where the ductwork's going. Forget about where the electrical stuff. Forget about where the air conditioning units and heating units are going to go. Forget about all that stuff. To an extent, forget about accessibility, stairs, how many egresses you need, elevators, stuff like that. We were told, forget about that. You imagine that? They just wanted our conceptual designs. And then they're going to grade us on a design basically by someone's opinion. So you come up with an artistic idea, you present it to someone, you're trying to sell it. Basically, it's what we did at the end of the semester to a bunch of other teachers and stuff. We try to sell our idea based on what our assignment was. Whether it was an ice skating rink, whether it was a refab of a building, and we had to explain to them on an artistic level why we did what we did and what represents you. It happened to be just a bunch of bullshit because once I learned the combination in this, and I realized all you gotta do is feed them a bunch of BS about light hitting this things and rays going this way. It didn't really matter. As long as it was presentable, they liked it. It's all that mattered at the end of the day. I wasn't sitting there trying to design a building that was going to be built. In fact, anything we've done during the 4 years we were there for our projects in architecture school could never be built. They would never be up to code. We never opened the International Building Code once. I didn't even know about the International Building Code until I got my first intern job. It was my junior year, and I was working for a window company of all places. And basically, what I was doing was just a CAD monkey. I was just drawing squares and rectangles of windows that were needed to be customly sized, so we could send out to the manufacturer. Contractors checked off what my drawings were to make sure they were accurate to what they needed for their job. We made adjustments if need be, and then we sent those final drawings out to the manufacturer who manufactured these windows customly. And that's what I did. I did that for 2 years while in college and a little outside of college. I didn't need a degree for that. I already learned CAD in high school. I didn't need nothing in college to learn me. And it wasn't about the International Building Code when I was learning about the different types of windows you need for different climates to meet the code. 1 pane, 2 pane, 3 pane, argon gas in between, different types of windows. I learned that on the job site. My first job, well, I guess you could say my first job, I was still in college. Well, technically, I was outside of college at this point. I didn't get a full time job. I graduated college in 2008. I did a year of grad school that ended up being a joke. The price they were charging for that, and with the outcome, it was like 5 years of night class to get a master's degree at this college I went to. And I did a year of it, spent $30,000 just to not meet qualifications because I needed to have a job at the time. But unfortunately, it was 2008 and no one was hiring. So it was tough to get jobs. So I couldn't meet my work credits, which is the most bullshit thing ever. I said to the school, I go, why don't you just offer day classes for people that don't have jobs? And I can continue working my part-time job at night like I was doing. It wouldn't have a problem. Instead of having to find some bullshit job and trying to, fudge numbers for you guys to be happy about me working some credits. The credits didn't go towards anything. And then when the process is to get your license after you blow your way through your master's degree, you probably could be sitting there until if you started school and finished it, you'd be close to 40 before you got your architecture license. That's why no one does it. The tests are ridiculous. You have to do them in a amount of time. Like I said, they don't teach you any of that stuff in school, so it's not like it's not even like it goes towards anything, right? It's not like I had to pay attention to this class in school because I paid attention to this class because it's good on that exam I got to take to get my license. No, you didn't need that stuff. It's crazy. It was bullcrap. But we did it. They told us we needed to do it, and we did. And I would, I should have seen the obvious as I seen people start dropping off as we were going through, realize how much bullshit it is. Some of the courses that were beneficial were like the construction management courses, but you still had to take the bullshit English and math classes that you didn't really need anyways. History classes, right? I took a psychology class. I took the history of ancient, of ruins, which was an interesting class, but I didn't see the necessary to take this class, right? But I had to take it. It was on my curriculum. I had to take these writing classes. It's kind of bullshit. Didn't really do anything, right? And I sit there and I was wasting this time, and and the way they do college too isn't very efficient, right? You have a class at 9:30 in the morning, but my next class won't be till 1, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So you can't really work a job during the time, right? So you'll only work at night, and then you got to balance work and homework and all that stuff. So I took advantage of it by exploring the city of Boston because I was going to school in Boston. I've been to Boston a bunch of times. I lived two towns over from Boston, but there was part of Boston I'd never seen before. So during these dead times between class, I would go and explore stuff I never did. So it was cool in that manner. Find cool places to eat lunch, find, you know, historical stuff I'd never seen before, explore areas of the town I'd never seen before, stuff like that, which was completely fine. But it wasn't the most efficiently time of my life. I would rather go to school in the morning, get done by 11 o'clock, call it a day, than be able to work. You could even find a full time job at that point. You can just go in a little later, right? A lot of jobs are very flexible with people working there, especially if they're going for a degree and they plan on staying there. It works out great for them. Not in this school, not in this situation. So I just went through the motions and did what I did. I was in my early 20s and I didn't know better. Wish someone told me, hey, this is what you do. So I started school my first 2 years at UMass Lowell as a computer science major. I did computer science for one semester. I switched over because it was just in for me. It was boring. I had no desire to this. The idea of me having to do what I was doing that first semester for the rest of my life would have drove me batshit crazy. Not for me. Some people, you love it. I know people have been coding since they were kids. Awesome, good for you. If that's something you're into, by all means, the world needs programmers. Wasn't for me. So I switched over to structural engineer. Now, I have to say, during this time in college, the last 3 semesters I was there, the structural engineering classes actually worked out pretty well because they were very, other than the stupid math classes I had to take, for some reason, I don't know why I was taking them, and the 1 or 2 English classes that were just, I just bullshit my way through. The actual engineering classes were interesting. They were surveying classes. It was structural, classes about, wood structures, steel structures, stuff like that. Stuff that I could see being useful if I went and became a structural engineer at the end of the time. At the time, I didn't know what I wanted to be. I know I wanted to do architecture. Structural engineering was the closest. This school did not offer that major, so I had to transfer out, which I inevitably did after my sophomore year. And I joined architecture school, and I realized it's a glorified art class. And I tell that to everyone. It's a glorified art class. Most people that graduate from an architecture major end up going engineering because there's more money in engineering. It really is. Being an architect, the best way I could describe it is being a musician, right? You have everyone can play an instrument. Some are really good, some are better than others, right? But there's like, 1% of those musicians that make it into like famous, right? Make it into like, bands that are heard around the world. So that's the same thing with architecture. There's 1% of architects that are well known, and even most people don't even know who those architects are. And a lot of that's just BS, anyways. Oh, I have an idea for I was inspired by a line or something like that. They say, right? And in some cases that is the case. And I try to get deep into it when I was taking class. I try to indulge myself into these projects and be like, what are they seeing that I'm seeing? But I just realized I'm more of a math and science, engineering, straightforward guy than a, you know, conceptual artist type, right? So I could come up with some cool ideas, and I did come up with some cool ideas, and I still have them to this day. One of these books over here next to me has all my work that I've ever done over the years. But um, what did it get me? It didn't really get me anywhere, right? So unfortunately, I went through life getting out of college, couldn't find a job, got a job with an engineering firm doing civil engineering, did that for a few years, part time, of course, because there was nothing full time. My first full time job was a mechanical engineering firm, and then I learned the mechanical aspects. It was at this point I learned about the mechanical aspects of a building. Not in college, not the 1 year of grad school I took. It was on the job. I got thrown in to be a drafter, and I eventually learned how mechanical systems of a building work. In 6 months, I knew everything about the mechanical designs of buildings there is to know. I learned about the heating and air conditioning. I learned about plumbing engineering with pumps and size pipes you need to run to things and all that stuff and how to size your pipes. And I also learned fire protection, basically what you need for that. And I learned about electrical to an extent. So I had a nice broad perspective of every mechanical system that goes into the building. So I already work civil. I learned everything about surveying and civil engineering working for this firm initially. In 6 months, I knew everything the boss needed me to do. No problem at all. I knew how to calculate stuff. I knew the codes for stuff. I knew about perk tests for septic tanks. I knew how to stake. I knew how to use the gun out in the field. I knew how to do all that stuff. I knew how to find landmarks, survey from that. Then I get into the mechanical field. I learned how to go into buildings and see what mechanical systems are there now. look up the information on them, if they're replacements, find something comparable. I learned how to size ducts. All this just working there. So in like 3 years of working on the job site, on jobs between mechanical and civil, I learned everything they needed to do for those jobs. Now I could have went to a technical high school and probably learned that and been out of college and got a job. All the stuff I learned working this job is the stuff they teach HVAC technicians when they take their classes, when they teach plumbers when they take their classes, when they teach electricians when they take those classes. I learned the same stuff they learned, but I didn't pay for it. I was working and learning while I was working. So I'd be at these jobs, and I had this giant book I still right here. It's called Mechanical and Electrical Equipment for Buildings, and basically breaks down how you design all these aspects for buildings and what do you need from the most part. And I would go to work. And then when I was downtime at work, when I was in drafting, I would go and explore the office, look at old plans, ask questions. I had a really good mentor, Jim, who sat next to me at the mechanical firm. He was the plumbing and fire protection guy, taught me everything I needed to know about plumbing and fire protection. And then I had a few mechanical guys there. Some were easy to work with than others. And they taught me a lot. A lot of stuff I was just thrown in there, and I had to try to figure it out myself, which stressed the hell out of me. But at the end of the day, I kind of figured it out, and it worked out good. So I learned all that. Great, right? As time went by, I realized I wanted to do more design. I wanted to really get into architecture. I wanted to do what I went to school for. So I go and I found the job of an architecture firm. I took a $10,000 a year pay cut to work for an architecture firm. And the only qualities I really had for this firm was the ability that I knew how mechanical systems work. I knew all the obstacles I would have had to come during designing in the real world, which they needed because we did a lot of restaurants and stores and stuff like that that have a lot of these aspects to it, which I was very helpful in. I knew how to CAD. And I didn't really know anything about the International Building Code. I still didn't at this point when it came to designing. When it came to mechanical and plumbing and stuff, I knew the electrical code, I knew the plumbing code, all that. Um, at building code, did not really know. Never taught it, never learned it, never needed it. Essential for being an architect, I'll tell you that much. So I'd go and I learned pretty fast how, stuff needed. And you could find it all on the internet. Most of the stuff I looked up, I have a binder I made of all shortcuts from the IBC and the every state has their own code that kind of adds on to the International Building Code. Massachusetts being one of those particular states that has appendices which basically change it a little bit because we have older buildings here and it's tough to be able to build to the extent that you need to build to modern buildings with older buildings and renovations and stuff. So you had to learn all that stuff, and it was the same basic stuff all the time. I was doing, later on when I left that firm and I started working for a firm that did mostly residential. I learned really quickly the residential code and the same stuff you approach every single day: stair width and heights, right? The heights of the rises and the runs of the stairs, how many doors, size of the doors, how to calculate, subterranean, considered a floor or not, roof designs, heights of roofs to make it legal, using going through the city code and making sure your building is up to that and meets all, the minimal requirements and stuff for setbacks and all that stuff. So I learned that working at another architecture firm because we did more residential. And then in about 3 months, I knew that pretty good. So now I'm looking at about 4 years of work between the engineering, the mechanical and the civil, and the two architecture jobs. About 4 years. This is from 2000, let's see, 12 to 2008. So 6 years, say. So 6 years of on the job training. I pretty much had a really, really good idea of how to design a building. First of all, where it sits on a lot, setbacks, stuff like that. How big a lot has to be, right? Then I learned how the building's constructed because we had a structural aspect in one of the firms I worked with. So I learned a lot about structural engineering, and there's shortcuts, right? I mean, it's repetitive. So like there's examples of stuff, for spans and everything, and you pretty much use the same formula all the time. In some cases, you have to alter it a little bit. You have to come up with some ideas, but for the most part, it's the same. It's the sizing of the beams and the columns, and that all goes into a mathematical equation, which is set in stone, right? So Learn how to do that. Learn how to structure the building. Learn how to lay out the house or the building, the restaurant, right? And I did 6 years of working. So I could have went on. So if I could do this all again, now I'll tell you, when I was done with college, $183,000 in student loans. As of today, this is September of 2025. I still owe $103,000 in student loans. And that is not a joke. That is a pure fact. I pay over $1,000 a month for student loans. I've been doing this since 2013. So we're in year 11. I've refinanced a few times, consolidated a bunch of them. I am due to pay off my last loan the June. My son, who just started kindergarten, graduates high school. Let that sit in right there. So 13 more years, I'll be paid off my student loans for the amount of information that I learned in 6 years of on the job training and working as I went. So would I go to college if I knew this? No. I would have went into a job knowing what I wanted to do. Went to an architecture firm that did engineering, like the last place I worked at, and tell them, listen, I don't know anything about this. I'm interested in learning. Teach me everything you know and see how it goes. Because there's no reason for me to have a degree working at that job. I had no intention to get my license. Well, now I have no intention to get my license. Back then I thought about it, and then I realized the hoops that you have to go through to get it. And I realized it's not feasible. It's not affordable. I'll never make my money back. It's not worth my time and effort, especially as I got older. The one thing about college I do say I'm grateful for is it got me into media like this. I started with the radio station at WUML 91.5. And I got into radio, and that's how I ended up sub-starting. I was one of the founders of the online station at the college I transferred to. And I stuck with this. I've been doing, this form since 2002, basically, since I really fell in love with radio and this medium. So, in a theory, I do enjoy designing and building and stuff. I sometimes I enjoy more of the building aspect of it, and it makes me think I should have became a general manager. I mean, a general contractor rather, and started an design build firm where I can design and just build it, right? That ideally, I wish I knew more. I wish I knew more people who were in the construction industry when I was looking for what I wanted to do. Because if I followed that path that I followed now, I would have just worked for a design build company and learned everything I needed to know from there, and then I would have been fine. I wouldn't have to go to college. Yeah, they probably would have wanted me to go to college, but I would have said, "What's the point? You guys are teaching me everything I need to know. There's nothing in college I'm going to learn other than a piece of paper. I have a piece of paper on my wall that's worth $183,000 that no one's ever asked me for a picture of all the jobs I went to. I just said I graduated. How do they know? Well, I did, but they don't know. So I can brag about it. We're getting to a point in society right now where no one wants to brag about going to college. It's almost shameful to go to college the way these universities are. The way these universities are kind of corrupting people, brainwashing these poor kids who go in there to be these useless mages. There's so many useless majors. College has become nothing but a joke. It's become nothing but a place where you have to force your kids to go to. Otherwise, you tell them they're going to be losers if they go to college. That's what they told us when I was in school. You'd be a loser if you don't go to college. They forced it down our throat for 12 years of school. You're going to be a loser. And they made us look down on the kids who didn't have the ability to go to college or never wanted to go to college. Our peers in school, these teachers made us look at them like they were like chop liver. In fact, those kids were the smart ones because a lot of those kids went to tech schools and went to the trades, and they started making way more money before I even caught up to how much they were making. And by that time, they're already fine. They already owned their business. They were doing their own thing, and they had some hands-on skills. Shame on the teachers in high schools for forcing the stuff down in kids' throats, so not finding a skill or something they were really, really good at and pushing to it. I have a kid who I was friends with for many, many years who was an excellent mechanic. This kid would be taking apart motors when we were in 8th grade, and he knew everything about a motor. He knew exactly how it worked. He knew how to take it apart. He knew how to put it back together. He knew how to fix anything that happened automotively. This is years before he even drove. He knew how this works. He could change tires. He could do oil. He could do everything about that. He always had a project. You'd go over his house. He had an engine and a million pieces on the table, and he was just fiddling around with it, trying to figure out how it works. Teachers made it feel bad that he, didn't have the attention span to go to college or really had any interest into it. And unfortunately, he led him into a dark path where he ended up substance abusing himself, in and out of jail a bunch of times. As far as I know, he's been clean, but he's my age, and he wasted a lot of his life because no one gave him the motivation because people were pushing him. You got to go to college. You got to finish school and stuff. Instead of saying, hey, buddy, why don't you go to the vocational school? You can do 4 years of auto mechanics, and then when you get out, you can open your own shop and be an entrepreneur. Start your own business. Maybe go to community college at night, take an accounting class or something like that, so you learn how to balance your books. But now there's software to do that, so you really don't even need to. Or you just hire someone to do it if you have a good enough business. No, they led this kid down the path of no return, and you know, it's terrible because I look back on it and I used to look at him saying, "Oh man, he's not going to ever do anything in life because he's didn't go to college." And it's not me being mean; it's what they told us in school. And they would put us on this high up. And I remember the reality I had when I graduated high school, when I graduated college. I was kind of on my high horse, and I needed to be taken down by one of my buddies. And I remember the day after graduation, I had went into the place where I was working, and he was much older than me, still a friend to this day, very good friend. And I sat at the bar talking to him, and he said, "I go, I made some kind of half-witted joke saying, well, now that I'm a college graduate, ladies are gonna stop flocking to me, something like that, or I'll be very, what's the word, um, very desirable, or something like that." And he said to me, he's like, "Dude, a million people graduate college every year, just like you." He's like, "It's not what you did, it's what you do with what you learned and what you didn't learn." I sat there. I go, he's absolutely right. Who am I to think I'm better than anyone else because I went to college and other people didn't? It's actually shameful to even think that. It's actually terrible to think that. And as you're younger, you do and think stupid things. And I am shameful that I ever had those thoughts in my mind. I ever looked down upon someone because they didn't go to college. I think it's a terrible way to look at life. And you want to give your kids an option. If your kids have an interest in something, I ask all the parents who are my age, who have young kids who are still in school, who may not be looking for college in a few years, to really evaluate if college is a good strength or not for them, because it could change the trajectory of their lives very easily. I know plenty of kids who are in college because they get this entitlement too, and they give it to me too. You come out of college, you think you're making 50 grand a year. They give you these fake numbers. I remember there was a piece of paper outside one of the what do they call it, the counselors or whatever like that in school, the advisors classroom. It had your majors, right, and it had architecture, $50,000 a year average income leaving school. So as a kid who was making $23,000 a year working at a sneaker store, and you see that number, you're like, well, it's a significant amount of money. Do you know I didn't make $50,000 a year working in that field until I was, God, 35, 36. My first job was making, they gave me a salary. It was like 33 a year, and I ended up taking a down page to like 29 to work at an architecture firm. 30 is a lot different than 50 a year, especially in Massachusetts. I'll tell you that much. But that's what they told us. That's what they told us. And then I got out of college thinking this was the truth. Boy, was I shocked. So my advice to so I don't want this to be in a preaching message. You do what you got to do. You want to go to college, you go to college. What up? I'm just telling you, you don't need to. I go, if you're in high school right now and you're watching this, you don't need to go to college. If there's something you're interested in too, that you can take classes, or you could be an apprentice of some sort, do that if that's what you enjoy doing. Because working for the rest of your life is miserable. It really is. I'd prefer not to work. Even though I enjoy my work, if I had the choice of working and not working, I'd probably not work. Most people are like that. But you got to enjoy it a little bit to make it worth the while. So my advice to you would be is if you're in high school right now and you're not sure if you want to go to college or not, Deep down, find out something you're interested in, whether it's electronics, whether it's plumbing, whether it's construction, whether it's mechanics, any of the trades out there. You want to be a firefighter, a police officer, we want to work in HVAC. Doesn't matter. Want to be a cook? There's plenty of professions out there that you can just get a job working as an apprentice to someone and learn everything you need to know. And in fact, learn more because you get the insides. You get the secret hits, tips and stuff, you know? You can always join the union. You could always go get your electrical license. You don't need a degree for that. You just need the hours. Put the hours in early, buddy. Get in there, start working when you're 16 years old, start accumulating those electrical hours so you can get your, master's electrician license by the time you're in the early 20s and start your own business. Same with any other trade. Do that. That is my advice for you. If you're not sure, or you have a foot in, 1 foot out of college, you don't know if you want to spend the money and make the investment. Trust me, there are options. You don't have to if you don't want to, and I hope you don't, because you have so many colleges right now. They flooded the market that you're just going. These colleges are useless. Before, back in the day, there was a handful of colleges. You had your big state schools, right, and you had a few of your private schools. Now everyone and their brother, even Donald Trump had a college. So everyone and their brother has a college. So it means absolutely nothing. It's a big Ponzi scheme. These university professors making like $150,000 a year to teach 1, 2 classes. Look at some of these senators who are professors or were professors. No mention name of one that maybe be is a senator of Massachusetts who's making outrageous money, I think, teaching 1 day a week or something like that. It's ridiculous. It's stupid. You don't need to do that. What a waste of money. College doesn't have to be that expensive. If they wanted to have college and have us go in there and do all the rigmarole, we could do it. You could do it for a very, very, very reasonable price because there's no reason one college charges like $5,000 a year and another one charges $100,000 a year. What's the difference? Because you're like up on a podium because you're at Harvard. Who gives a shit? It's the same education. It's supposed to be the same education. You're supposed to be learning the same things. Oh, why? Because your teacher's like a professor or something or an ex-senator or whatever. Who cares? Whether they know money better than the guy who's been working in the field for 30 years teaching a class. It doesn't. And you shouldn't be looked upon down to be going to a lower college. That's another thing they do, too. They look down upon us if we went to college, but we went to community college. Oh, but you go to community college, so you must be stupid. No, stupid people are the ones who went to college. That's the plain simple right there. Those are the people that are stupid. Us, me, myself. Thinking that I was going to make a lot of money coming out of college and not. No. Absolutely asinine to think that. So if you're you're on the fence, take my advice. Think really, really hard into it. There are options rather than going to college and saving yourself a lot of money. Now, if you just graduated college or you're about to graduate college, I say just finish it out. You might as well. But don't expect to make money until you're in your late 30s, if that's the avenue, because you wasted about 10 years of which you could be working. So there are people who are your age who are already ahead of you because they went to trade schools. They opened their own shops. They're mechanics, they're electricians, they're plumbers. Those people are going to be making more money because they put in the time and the hours while you were in college. Now, I know some people did both, which is smart. It's a good thing. I should have done that. I should have worked for an electrician when I was in college or a contractor because I would have learned a lot more than I did, working retail and a restaurant. But, I mean, it's a job. A job's a job you got to do. I didn't know. I didn't really I was smart. No one told me. I'm telling you. Finish school. When you get out of school, you're going to have to start from the bottom of the totem pole. Any company you walk into, no matter if you have, you finished #1 in your class at Harvard and you're walking into some big investment firm, you're going to start at the bottom of the totem pole. You're going to be sorting mail. You're going to be doing copies. You're going to be doing asinine, ridiculous, terrible work. It's true. My wife's very successful. She did not go to college for what she does for work. She went to grad school, she did a little grad school like I did for completely different than what she does for work. And she's very well because she started from the bottom in her field and she worked her way up. And obviously college and stuff delayed that, but it is what it is. At a certain point, you're going to have to throw trash away with your fancy college degree from Harvard. And you're going to be sitting there saying, what did I do? And you're going to be depressed and you're going to be sad. But I'm going to tell you, don't be sad and depressed. Know the work that you do when you start at a company from the bottom makes you a stronger and better person, makes you more respectable, makes you understand the jobs and what other people do. Just like working in a restaurant, the dishwasher has one of the hardest jobs, but if you make his job a little bit easier for him and respect his job, then it makes everyone else behind you follow the same exact thing too. Don't look down on him because he's just a dishwasher. Because at one point you could have started off as a dishwasher. And that goes to my theory where I think all kids should have to do a job in either retail or in the restaurant industry before they graduate high school. Because this will give you some really, really life lessons. The kids I know who've worked as a server or in retail are nicer to people in public. They have a different perspective on how you should act as a human in society. And you don't have this like entitlement or this put yourself on a totem like put them up in the top of the totem pole like you're better than everyone else because you went to college and you never worked in a restaurant. No, shame on you. You should have worked at a restaurant. First of all, it's great money, especially when you're younger, and it gives you a life experience that you can't no college can duplicate. Working with people is one of the hardest things anyone could do. But at the end of the day, it makes you a better person. It builds your personalities, builds your communication skills and communication skills. You could know everything in that book, but if you can't communicate, you just, you know, you're useless to some companies because they need you to communicate. They need you to do more than just recite numbers and stuff. You need to present. So there's options out there for you kids out there. Don't be discouraged. If you're going into the workforce after college, don't be discouraged. It's going to take you about 10 years until you're making the money you're making. I'm sorry, that's the case. Some states, you're going to have to work 2 jobs. I'm sorry, you're going to have to work, at your fancy accounting firm, investment firm, whatever you're into for a little while, and have a second job on the side. Make some extra cash, especially if you live in Massachusetts or Connecticut or New York or California. You're going to have to get by. It's going to be a struggle. It's going to make you a better person, though. It's going to make you work harder. It's going to make you more enlightened. And it doesn't working hard doesn't make you a bad person. The more you work, the better of a person you get because you have a better respect and understanding for the value of a dollar and how society works. So, thank you guys for listening. Thank you for my preaching today about college and just my life experience that I want to share with all the kids out there, whether you're 22 years old coming out of college right now or you're 45 and still don't know what to do. There's options out there. It's never too late to start something that you enjoy doing. It's never too late. Just do it. That's my motivation for you. Do it. Don't give me excuses. Just do it. You find a way with your family. You'll find a way with your life to adjust to make this happen. But do it because the biggest regret in your life you're gonna have is not doing it, and that's sad. And you want to lead as an example, especially if you have kids or you have nephews and nieces. You want to be that person to do something that you wouldn't ordinarily do, and do it because you want to do it, and you'll feel so much better about it. You really will. At the end of the day, it'll feel so good. And that's the kind of thing they do with these high school, these college degrees. I feel good because they got my college degree. That's great. But did you need it for what you're doing? I know you want to be the first person in your family to graduate college and all that stuff, and that's very, admirable. There's nothing wrong with that. But did you need to do that? Well, could you have just gotten a job and worked as hard and from the bottom up and gotten where you've been, right? So these are things you got to think about because when you come, someone with myself and has to, pay $1,000 a month for the next 13 years, and I've been doing it for the last, 15, 16 years. It's tough. It gives me a lot of remorse and a lot of buyer's guilt. I didn't need to do that. And I wish the future me could talk to past me. I don't regret it because along the way I met a lot of friends. I made a lot of life decisions based on what I did. So I don't say it was a waste of my life. I say it was a waste of money. I wish I didn't have to pay this money. I wish I looked at the big picture, did the math. But there's nothing I could do about my own, so I could just be grateful for all the things I did get along the way, the friends I made, the experiences I had, and the opportunities that opened because of things I done. And that's all you can do. Never look at something you regret. Look at if something bad happens to you, try to find the silver lining in it. And I could give you a list of stuff that happened bad to me over the years, but there was a silver lining that led to something greater. And unless you have that optimism, you can't see that. But I want you to see that. So thank you guys for listening. Hope you enjoyed this episode of the 84 Show. Please subscribe. Let me know your comments below. I'm curious to hear what you guys think about this subject. And we'll see you guys soon. See you later.